Does your child melt down when plans change? Do they insist on having things done their way? Do they get stuck on the tiniest details? Now, this isn't just stubbornness. This is your child's brain struggling with flexibility. In this video, I'm about to tell you 7 signs your child is stuck in the left side of their brain and how to help them adapt. I'm Lisa, a child behavior expert and a parent coach. I have over a decade of experience as a pediatric occupational therapist. I've helped hundreds of families who felt stuck trying to figure out how to manage their child's rigid thinking and emotional challenges. After learning these strategies that I'm about to tell you, these parents went from constant battles with their rigid thinker to finally understanding what was going on in their child's brain, how to actually help them become more flexible, and most importantly, they saw fewer meltdowns. Now, some kids don't just prefer routines, they actually depend on it. They love the structure, the predictability, the logical explanations. It just helps them to make sense of the world. When the world doesn't operate the way that they're expecting though, then their brains are feeling like something is completely wrong with the situation. They feel confused and it's really hard for them to cope. So your child might rely on a very specific structure every day. And of course, life happens. Sometimes those routines, they change up. And that's what throws your kid into a big tantrum or meltdown. Or you might be playing a board game with the family and there's just an unclear rule and your guys are arguing over the technicalities. Your child is just so sure that they're right. They're just not backing down. And this is just causing so much tension and stress that no one's having fun anymore. Or maybe you're asking open-ended questions like, hey, how was your day? How was that time you had at your friend's house? And all you're getting is very factual descriptions of what happened. There really isn't much emotion in it or feelings that are being discussed. And it's making you feel quite disconnected. You're just kind of getting these really short, abrupt answers, and then your child walks away. And you're like, I don't even know how to have a conversation with them. Also, our very left brain dominant kids, they often think very logically and just read things super literally. So they might be seeing someone's facial expression and thinking, that looks like that person is mad. Are they mad at me? And it starts to get their brains ruminating on that thought. They start to think that that person's mad at me, I did something wrong, and they get very confused in that, really, really stuck. And what we see is a lot of negative self-talk happening. A lot of our kids who are left brain thinking, they really have a hard time tapping into those social cues and reading them properly. And they start to internalize it as someone is mad at me, someone doesn't like me, and that sends them on a very endless loop of negative self-talk. So this isn't just about your child being stubborn or defiant, it's literally about how their brains are wired. When they are left brain dominant, they are processing information from a logical lens, which is why we see a lot of black and white thinking, and it's really hard for them to see the gray in the middle. As parents raising a kid who is a rigid thinker, who is stubborn, who lacks adaptability, it can feel extremely exhausting. It seems like every conversation becomes an argument over what's fair, what's right, what's logical, and it just gets you guys stuck in a loop. And you're noticing too, the way that they're handling other social interactions, things always have to be their way. And it's impacting their relationships with other kids. Other kids don't want to play with them because they're rigid thinkers. They always have to do it their way, and the other kids always have to adapt to them, making it feel unfair. And so you're noticing that they're struggling with those social interactions. And it can feel very disheartening to see your child struggle to make friends, have social relationships with other people, and also really get into a lot of arguments with other people. You worry that how is this going to affect them long term? Are they ever going to be able to make long-term friendships? Are they ever going to have relationships with people? How are they going to handle a job if everything has to be done their way? And we hear this all the time. The world isn't going to just adapt to your child, and you need to prepare your child for the world. And yes, while that statement is true, the world is going to do the way they're going to do things right? But we also need to realize that we need to prepare our kids. If you recognize that your child is a rigid thinker, that they only see things in a very black and white way, it is vital that you are working on skills to help them become more adaptable, because that is what's going to make them emotionally resilient and help them to really function in the real world when they become adults. And the good news is you have so much power in this process, because you are the ones that are going to help them merge the two sides of the brain. So we've talked about the left side of the brain, and I'm going to get into what the right side of the brain does. So just to recap, the left side of the brain, we talk about logical type of processing, factual type of processing. So that is why you're seeing your child use so much logic and reasoning. However, the right side of the brain is completely different. This is more of the emotional, creative side of the brain, where we're able to problem solve when things don't go according to plan. So if, let's say, there is a change in schedule, our ability to adapt requires us to see things from a different perspective, to be able to problem solve in that moment. And that's all right brain thinking. So if our kids are relying too much on the left side of the brain and they're too rigid, it makes it so much harder to see a different side to things. And that's what's getting them so upset, leading to all the meltdowns that you're experiencing. So you're probably recognizing that your child is very left brain dominant, and you recognize the importance of integrating the right side, that emotional, creative side, problem-solving side of the brain, so that your child can learn to adapt better in this world. This process might feel very overwhelming to you, which is why I'm here to help you. I'm a parent coach that helps you to understand what is really going on with your child, and I help you to find the right strategies that fit your child and yourself as parents, so that you can properly implement it and help them integrate both the left and the right sides of their brain so that they can function in the real world. It is so important to recognize that early intervention is absolutely vital in helping our kids develop the skills that they need long term. So if you're noticing that your child is struggling with inflexible thinking, they're super stubborn, they're not adaptable, you need to find the right strategies today. Please do not wait years down the road when things start to get more complicated in their life. They're going to have more complexities in older grades. The relationships that they're going to be making will be vastly more complicated, that if you try to intervene then, it will be much harder. So if you're noticing these challenges today, you need to get the right strategies in place. This is where my parent coaching can really help you to understand what it is that you need. If you're ready to get the right support, check the description box to find out how we can start working together. So let's get into these 7 signs that your child is very left brain dominant. Number 1, they struggle with transition and unexpected changes. So when there is a shift in their regular routine, maybe there is a substitute teacher that's coming, or there was a cancellation on a field trip, and all of these things are sending your child into a spiraling meltdown. So why is this happening? Well, the left brain craves that predictability and that routine, and when there's a cancellation in a plan or a change in a teacher, that totally throw things outside the window for them. So that's why we're seeing all of this behavior come out. So what can we do instead? Now, it's really important to start teaching our kids different perspectives. So if, let's say, the situation is that your child's teacher is not going to be there today and it's going to be a substitute teacher, first of all, we want to prepare them. We want to tell them that sometimes your regular teacher may not be there. So what can we do? What can we think about when that happens? If we have a substitute teacher, how can you introduce yourself to them? How can you ask them for help? It would be very similar to how you might ask your regular teacher, and giving them that kind of role play to show them what they can actually do in that moment, because that's where they're having the hardest time, is when something is different. It's like their brains just totally freeze up and they have no idea, how do I handle this new situation, because I don't know what to expect. The teacher doesn't know me. I don't know them. And so when you walk them through by actually explaining to them what it is to expect from this change, that can help them to prepare and start to see things differently. And you're going to feed them different alternatives of what they can do. So you're actually giving them parts of your right brain to help them figure out what is a different solution. So if they go to school and, the field trip is canceled, well, they're thinking, well, I was looking forward to it, first of all. What a disappointment. So that, for one, is that emotional regulation piece. They're going to feel lots of frustration, and we're there to teach them that it's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel disappointed that your field trip got canceled, but there are things that we can do instead. So giving them an opportunity to think about, what are some ideas? Now that you're going to have an opportunity to stay at school, what are some things that you would like to do instead? That's going to get their brains thinking, utilizing that right side of the brain. Number 2, they insist that there's only one right way to do something. So maybe it's where they get to sit in the car or at the dinner table. It has to be that spot. Or maybe it comes down to homework and they think that there's only one way to solve this math problem. And you're trying to teach them, you're trying to show them like there's another way to think about it, and they're like insisting, no, it has to be this way because this is how I was taught. So when this happens, you want to encourage them to start brainstorming, start to think of different solutions to their problem. So if they're so stuck on solving a problem in one way, acknowledging that, hey, I know that doing it this way, it feels the most comfortable to you. But did you know that there are multiple ways to solve any kind of problem? So why don't we try to find a different way to do this? When we show it to them in that way, we're opening their eyes up to the possibilities, because they're so used to doing it a certain way that when it doesn't go as planned, it really just irritates them and causes them to get really frustrated. But we do, as parents, need to teach them that everything in life has different ways to solve any kind of problem. And that's what's going to build so much resiliency in them. That word is something that I really love to talk about because it's so empowering when we as parents recognize that we have the power to build our child's resilience, because that's what actually gets them far in life. And especially when it comes to figuring out how to solve a problem in life, because we know our kids are going to face problems. They're going to make mistakes, or things are not going to go the way they want it to. And we need to give them the tools to help open up their minds and start thinking of things in a different perspective. Number 3, they struggle with empathy and emotional expression. So they may not see things from another person's perspective. So your child might be engaging in some silly behaviors, maybe with a friend. They're kind of poking fun at another person, and they don't realize that that type of behavior could be hurting that other person's feelings. It's not even processing, because logically on their left side of the brain, they're just thinking, this is just fun. It's just fun. We're just having a good time. But the other side, that right side of the brain, helps us to read the other person's social cues. If we're doing something that is kind of teasing another kid, do we see that they're having like sad facial expressions? They look upset. Are we reading that properly? Those are the things that a lot of our logical, left side dominant type kids are really missing out on. So we need to teach them to start focusing on emotional expressions, facial expressions, teaching them how that person might feel, really doing like a lot of turn taking and perspective taking, so that you can put yourself in the shoes of that person that is being teased. How do you think you might feel in that moment? That really gets their brains working, really having to tap into that emotional side. And you'd be surprised, with those types of prompts, you can really get a lot out of your child that you otherwise wouldn't. Most of the times they'd just be like, I don't know, whatever. But once you prompt them with the right types of questions like that, it really makes them think, well, if I was actually being teased, I think I would feel pretty upset. I think my feelings would be hurt. And that really gets their emotional, thinking really working a lot harder than it usually does. Number 4, they struggle to make friends. And this one really tags on to point number 3 about kind of missing out on empathy and that emotional expression. So if your child is really struggling with making friends, you really got to ask the question, why? And in the case of our kids who are very left-brained thinking, where they think very logically, they often miss out on social cues. So if they're interacting with another child and they don't realize that, their behavior is kind of maybe bothering the other kid, it's really intrusive, they're totally missing that out. The other kids are going to feel like, I don't really want to hang out with this person. And that's what's causing the distance between your child and their peers. They often also miss unspoken rules, things that we don't explicitly kind of tell one another that this is just kind of how it is. We kind of intuitively know that is very right side brain processing. And so our left brain kids, like, they're really missing out on what those social rules are that you kind of just figure it out as you're interacting. It really just kind of goes over their head. So we need to explicitly teach what those unspoken rules are. So what you can do is start working on interactions. Start really finding time to play with your child and use those moments to practice interacting with one another. Games that require you to take turns, require you to work together as a team to try to get to an end goal. Those are all really great opportunities to help your child build social awareness and start really being in tune and thinking about how others might feel in that moment. Number 5, they get really stuck in rules and routine. So of course, our kids, they love to have everything predictable. They love their schedules. But the thing is, of course, in life, there's always going to be disruptions, and we need to help our kids prepare for those disruptions. Because what I see happen a lot for our kids who are very stuck in the way that they think, and it comes down to like time management or sticking to a schedule, is if, let's say, in the morning, the bus comes at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're starting to run late, but they know in their minds that the bus comes at 8 and they're behind schedule. That actually keeps them stuck because they're like, I'm going to be late. I know the bus is coming at 8 o'clock and I am going to be late. So therefore I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just going to avoid this because I know I cannot get there on time. And this is where I've seen so many families get really, really stuck with their rigid thinkers, because then they're kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Because yes, my kid's running late, but now they can't even adapt because like I can easily drive them to school. That's not a problem, but they won't even shift their thinking and be okay with coming in to the car for me to drive them. So what we really need to do is work outside of those moments and really start teaching our kids that we can shift the way routines are. And you start by incremental changes. So the way to do this is introduce it in small and harmless disruptions. So a really fun one that I like to recommend to the parents that work with me is, why don't we introduce something fun like, let's have breakfast for dinner? I know that seems kind of silly, but it really just helps to kind of shift out of that routine, because your child is so used to having breakfast at breakfast time, but having breakfast at dinner time, that is really off of our routine. And it's harmless. I mean, it's one time that you can try just to get your child used to a change in what was planned. You also want to frame the shift as something that feels adventurous, right? It's not something that should feel tense or scary to do. It's how we as parents, we introduce things to our kids that really make a huge difference of whether or not they're going to accept it and want to try it out. If we make the disruption exciting, we pretend that, we are detectives, we're trying to solve a problem here, that can be a really great way to frame it for your child. So an example, if let's say you are driving and you hit construction. Now you need to find a detour. You need to get around, because obviously you're going to either be waiting for such a long time to get through the construction, or maybe it's just a complete dead end that you can't get through. This is a moment to really incorporate your child into problem solving, because typically we would just figure it out ourselves and continue driving. You would stop in that moment and say, oh my gosh, we just hit construction here. We can't get through. I think we need to put on our detective hats to figure out what is a better way to get there. And there we go. Now we have an opportunity to teach our kids to think outside the box. Where can we go? You know the neighborhood well enough. What if we take that street and then we turn left and turn right, and we'll be on the street back to the main road? This is going to help your child to really start embracing problem solving rather than freezing up and being stuck in their thinking. Number 6 is struggling with creativity and imagination. So they're very logical thinkers. So everything is very factual. There really isn't much kind of like emotional flow to what they have to say. Everything is just super, super literal. And we want to encourage more of that creative, imaginative side, because that, again, is really tapping into the right side of the brain. So some examples of this would be your child is engaging in play with you and you're trying to play creatively and they go, no, this is not how we play. It has to be this way. Or maybe they struggle with storytelling, with pulling in different fantasies and different ideas into their story. And they're just trying to tell you something like, the dog walked across the street, period. Well, let's add some creativity to that story. What did the dog do? Did he prance around and twirl in a circle to try to catch his tail before he quickly dashed across the street? We want to help our kids find that creative edge to them to help really, really spark that neuroplasticity on the right side of the brain. So how we can encourage this is through expanding their play. And when we have kids who are very logical, they might have interests that are very, science-based, very engineering-based, right? Things like science or maybe even history, though math too, those are very logical type of subjects that a lot of our left brain thinkers like and have interest in. So utilizing that to help them build some creativity. So if they're interested in math and they're just kind of really good at, solving the math problems, let's start adding a story to it. Right? You can get really creative with this. If they're on multiplication or maybe they're on fractions or trigonometry, build a story around that. Number 7 is that they resist trying new things. So maybe you're trying to enroll them into a new class, or maybe there is a social event happening and your child is just saying no, they don't even want to try and go, not even one class, they're not willing to do it. Why this is happening is because the left side of the brain, it's making them fearful of the uncertainty, because when you do go to something new, we don't know exactly what to expect. And that's what's creating so much fear and worry that's making them freeze and not want to go. So what we can do is help to normalize that, there are going to be times where we're going to do things that make us feel uncomfortable and we might make mistakes, but that is okay. And really helping to normalize that can help them to really feel at ease. Also giving them some positive affirmations and scripts that they can say to themselves can really help them. This also taps into the right side of the brain. It helps them to feel like they can do something. They feel more empowered and strong when they're feeling so stuck in uncertain about a situation. So a positive script that you can teach them to say is, hey, I've never tried this before, but let's just see how it goes. I may not know what to expect, but I know I have the skills to problem solve. When we teach our kids to have these positive thoughts about themselves and help them recognize that they actually do have the tools to help them manage this, it gives them so much more confidence to handle the uncertainty. So if you're noticing now that your child is very stuck in the left side of their brain and you're noticing how much this is impacting their day-to-day, it is so important that you know what to do to start supporting them in building that connection to their right brain. Remember, you're not alone in this. I'm a parent coach that can help you figure out what are the right strategies and tools that you need to start implementing today that's going to start building your child's confidence and resilience for the future. If you're ready to get started, you can find all the information in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next one.